and his son, his like sort of 12-year-old son, is like,
Yeah.
wait, why are you upset? You just put the two biggest villains of this country in jail for the rest of their life. And he really has to be talked round by his young son in order to see that the glass is half full, to see that he really has made a difference and he really has achieved, because he's so
wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be.
Hello and welcome to Deep Dives with my friend Steve Hackman and myself, James Marsh. This episode, we are talking Argentina, 1985.
Hey, but you know the drill. If you haven't already subscribed to Deep Dive, it'd be a great favor to us if you went ahead and hit that subscribe button. While you're there, go ahead and ding the bell, and that way you're notified every time we upload a new video. And just as a reminder, Deep Dives does contain spoilers. I started to do
Deep Dives.
Just as a reminder, Deep Dives does contain spoilers, so you have been warned. James, let's talk Argentina, 1985.
Okay, so yeah, as the title might suggest, this is a movie from Argentina, about Argentina. It's Argentina's Oscar submission this year, and surprised everybody by winning the Golden Globe for Best International Film, beating out the likes of sort of Decision to Leave and many other films that were perceived as a better bet. It is the story of a team of lawyers who are essentially tasked with a civil court case in the 1980s when the ousted military junta regime essentially are put on trial, and it falls to the public prosecutor, Julio Cesar Stratera, played by the great Ricardo Darin, to sort of spearhead this task force. He is, fielding death threats from all over, and nobody else wants to join him, or they've been outed as fascists, or they're dead already. And so he strikes upon the idea of essentially recruiting a group of young sort of law students and legal apprentices, if you like, whose politics are most definitely far more aligned with him, and just don't care. That they're young and reckless enough not to be intimidated by this rogues gallery of politicians and military heads. So Steve, what do you think of Argentina 1985?
I love this movie. I'm a sucker for a great courtroom drama, and this one is done so well. And I mean, as I've said many times in previous reviews, I have a real burn my saddle about authoritarian police states that really do bad things to people and
you're a fan
screw
or
up
you're
societies.
Not a fan?
I'm not a fan. I'm
not
a huge
okay.
not a fan. And so watching a military junta that just did horrific just atrocities, and that was one of the best parts and hardest parts to watch in this film. It's the live testimony in the courtroom of the actual actions, the abductions, the humiliations, the rapes, the tortures. You find yourself shifting in your seat thinking, how can humanity do this? How can one person do this to another person? And so I think this film has gotten a lot of love because I think it's very poignant for today. We're seeing the rise of fascism in the world. They don't always call it fascism. They call it neo-fascist. But there is this far-right nationalism that comes under the guise of we're protecting society. And that's what this junta was doing. All of its supporters, even in the film, but they were protecting us. They were defending us against that, this, and the other thing, which is what we're seeing today. It's echoing today. And so this movie, even though it's 1985, really hits close to home for 2023.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I mean, one of the great sort of the pieces of rhetoric that the sort of defense use in order to sort of intimidate and throw off the prosecution is the fact that because it was a military junta that is being put on trial, any opposition to that is, well, what have you got against the military? Don't you love your country? And it reminded me of many things actually along the way, but The Life of Emile Zola, which is a film that we've done in our Every Best Picture series, which was similarly about the French sort of military state leadership sort of being put on trial for all of their nastiness. And there were real echoes of that in this film, where it was just equating sort of the military as an institution with these horrible criminals and corrupt leaders, and saying that it was impossible to separate the two, where what the prosecution are saying, no, that's entirely the thing. It's these bad apples in position of power, that they're out to essentially prove were culpable and were polluting the institution rather than pushing back against the institution itself.
One of the things I saw in this, and I wouldn't say this is a shortcoming, but it did follow a familiar pattern that we see in similar type movies. And I have to be careful because this was an actual occurrence. So it's not like they were fictionalizing this, but I even think of films like The Untouchables, where you have this corruption that's out there. And then you have this, Boy Scout zealot who's going to mete out justice, but the cops are all corrupt. So how do we? We have to go to the police academy. We got to go to the young people. Get that fruit, those apples right off the tree.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I guess you were also seeing echoes of earlier
very
films
much so.
there.
Very much. It was The Untouchables was the other big one I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
There are so many sort of echoes in that. And yes, I did want to get onto this is. And you're right, it's not a shortcoming of the film, but it's a kind of, shall we say, limitation, if you like, which is that it's an incredibly sort of well-worn genre. And I think that's why it has proved very accessible and why it has struck a chord with certain awards bodies and voting bodies and what have you. It's because it's accessible, it's easy to recognize, what you're getting into. And whether the specifics of the history of the subject matter are known to you or not. So it was no real surprise to me that it did win a Golden Globe, particularly. But at the same time, I think it occasionally lacked that sort of surprising peak or twist or what have you in the viewing experience, where you're kind of just like, yeah, this is rock solid. This is really good. This isn't doing anything wrong. It's slick, it's polished, it's well acted, it's well written, it's well executed, and yet it's just another courtroom drama.
And I think because they had to kind of, keep this within the actual account of the trial, even when they tried to bring in those little Hollywood or movie elements to kind of heighten the tension of a threat of this way or that, you almost feel like this is just thrown in to kind of elevate it, because this is very much a straightforward court drama. But I would say Ricardo Darin's performance is so, and I'm trying to think of the right word, contrast it with courtroom dramas where you have, Al Pacino saying, you can't, what was the line?
And Justice for All.
And for Justice for All. What's the famous line he's got in that? It's not, you can't handle the truth. That's A Few Good Men.
A Few Good Men. I can't remember.
He's got another, where he just, he goes out. And Tom Cruise, you can't handle the truth. I want the truth.
Yeah.
There's none of that in this film. Ricardo Darin just has this very steady, that he's got the gravitas that we're always talking about. And when he delivers that closing argument at the end, there's no hyper emotion. There's nothing in it that's Hollywood, that we're going to create this crescendo moment where, yes, good has triumphed and evil has been vanquished. That is communicated, but it's done in just such a grounded way. And I thought he did a wonderful job of being able to communicate without the hyperbole that we're used to in courtroom dramas of a similar like.
Yeah, no, I think that is true. I wonder whether that's the filmmakers being sensitive to their domestic audience a little bit, because it's one of the things like, we've won the battle, but the war is still going on, and it says in the scroll at the end, that it took a very long time. And even up until very, very recently, they're still, putting people in prison for this. And so it's not like it was a Pyrrhic victory or a hollow victory or anything like that. But at the same time, it was just the start. And it reminds me of one of my favorite scenes, actually, which is right towards the end, when he gets the phone call with the verdicts.
Right.
And he's very unhappy with the verdicts because, half of them got acquitted, a couple of them got a couple of years, but then the two big guys did get sort of, one got life. Yeah, they both got life. And his son, his like sort of 12-year-old son, is like, wait, why are you upset? You just put the two biggest villains of this country in jail for the rest of their life. And he really has to be talked round by his young son in order to see that the glass is half full. To see that he really has made a difference and he really has achieved, because he's so clouded by yet another example of the system working to protect its own kind of thing, and he's a bit pushing back against him again, that he fails to see that he's actually made some real change and actually made some real progress. And that moment for me, which is a movie moment, that almost certainly didn't happen. But that was one of the moments that really worked for me.
No, that was a great scene. The other scene that was very personal for me, because it's, we've got a lot of polarization in America, the right, the left, the whole Trump thing, and it's split family. So the whole scene where the assistant attorney, they're saying through the whole time, you'll never win your mother over. That whole generation that is pro-military, you cannot reason with them. They are so set in their ways, they cannot be moved. And I'm just nodding, because I'm going, yep, I know. I don't want to get too personal here, but I know my family. Nope, they're not going to change. They're not going to change. And then when the mother calls and said, I listened to the trial, you were right. And the son is almost breaking down, because it's not that he wants to be right over his mother, but it's like, do you understand? This is a moral issue, and I don't need to be right in the argument. I need my mother to know what's right and wrong. And that one really resonated with me, because I think there's a lot of people in America that want certain segments to, I don't want to win this argument as much as I want you to acknowledge what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah. And that's why I can see a movie like this probably maybe going all the way. I mean, I think when it comes to the Oscars, I think All Quiet on the Western Front, now that Decision to Leave got snubbed and isn't even in the running. It does look, just from the number of nominations it's accumulated, that All Quiet on the Western Front is the front runner. But I think if anything is going to upset it on the night, watch out for this one, because this is the kind of movie that's going to do that for all of the reasons that you are talking about. And it wouldn't be the first time either. It's not a precedent. Ricardo Darin has in the past upset this very race. He did a movie in he did a movie in 2009 called The Secret in Their Eyes, which was Argentina's entry. It got remade very badly with Nicole Kidman and Julia Roberts and Chiwetel Ejiofor in it. But it was a really cool movie about about sort of the ghosts of Argentina's history. That was up against films like Michael Haneke's The White Ribbon, which I think had won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, and A Prophet, the Jacques Audiard French prison movie, which is a great movie. I really like that one. But then The Secret in Their Eyes came sort of out of nowhere and won the award. And I'm not giving all the credit to Ricardo Darin. It's a great movie, and it's about, I think, a number of the sort of same kind of themes, and about sort of as I said, the ghosts of history, and putting those ghosts or those memories to rest. And I think that really kind of resonated in a way that something as cold and clinical as like The White Ribbon, which is about sort of the Hitler Youth, essentially, didn't quite have that effect. So watch out for this. But again, if this is a sort of a breakthrough part for Ricardo Darin, so be it. And I'm surprised, he's an actor that I'm surprised hasn't had more English speaking roles, actually. I've been watching him for ages now. I'll be honest, he's probably the only Argentinian actor that I know by name. Right. But he is kind of like the Argentinian Robert De Niro or something. He's a bit younger. He's like in his early 60s, I think. But I've been watching him in movies for 10, 15 years. And if he's in it, then you're in for a good, solid movie. He has good taste and great talent.
Oh, that's good. I didn't know half of what you said there, so I learned a little bit there. What I found in this, and I'm drawing this my end to a close, is they were giving dates 1984 going into 1985, and this is when I graduated high school. All I kept thinking was, when they were looking dates on the calendar, where was I at this moment? I was just a 17-year-old kid drinking some beers with my friends, living the good life, and I'm thinking, at the same time, these people were going through the most horrific of experiences in their own country, when literally their own country goes insane. There's nothing that probably scares me more than knowing that society has not just kind of gone off the rails a bit, but has literally gone insane, and you can't trust anything. I mean, it's horrific to experience that. And that's, watching this film, I found, was very, very emotional for me. And I really resonated with it, and it's a message that needs to go out. This is, although it's an Argentinian context, this is a world issue, and I think that's why it's really resonated with a lot of audiences today, as you mentioned previously.
I mean, the other thing for me that was interesting was recontextualizing what I knew of Argentina in the 80s alongside this, because there were two events in the 80s that really put Argentina in my consciousness. First of all, there's the Falklands War.
Yes.
Which was kind of almost, looking at it in this, after watching this one, it's kind of like the last hurrah of the military junta almost, because Galtieri is one of the guys on trial, right? And he's the name that I know that's associated with that military
and
escapade.
I got to admit, this was a history lesson for me too, because then you realize, of course, the junta would have done something like that. As the economy is collapsing, what does every authoritarian do? They look for an external expedition to rouse the patriotism and the nationalism.
That's it. To whip up support, and they're like, they've got this British colony on their doorstep that they have some claim. They have claim to. Yeah, let's go get our sheep back. So there's that, and then obviously there's this whole regime change, and then they win the World Cup in 1986. And you must realize, I mean, back then we were, as a Brit, I was really annoyed because Maradona cheated and beat us with a handball. But that
the hand of God,
that's it, the hand of God, which interestingly is referenced in the Paolo Sorrentino film, The Hand of God. And Paolo Sorrentino's film Il Divo, which is about the corrupt government in Italy going way back, is another film that this one reminded me of, but I digress within a digression. Suffice to say that Argentina winning the World Cup in 1986, seen now as happening sort of just a year after all of this, and just a couple of years after this historic regime change, you kind of have to concede, well, they probably deserved that. They needed that as a nation. They kind of needed that. And
it's like Invictus when South Africa won the Rugby World Cup right after the end of apartheid. There's that, they needed that. And good that you were able to make that connection. James, as we draw to a close, we need, as always, an instrument of measure. What are we going to do? What are we going to use?
Lollipops. I was trying to think of one of the most innocuous props in the movie that wasn't just going to be awful. How about lollipops? Because what the guy says to the kid at the end, he's like, moles don't suck lollipops or something.
That's right. So James, how many lollipops will you give Argentina in 1985?
Well, I mean, I gotta be honest, I thought this was great. It was a movie that I'd kind of been putting off because I was like, I kind of know what that movie's going to be about. Well, not so much that I knew the historical details, but I kind of knew what kind of movie it was going to be, and I was like, it'll be fine, it'll be good, it'll be slick, it'll be polished, but and it was all of those things, and in large ways it was the movie that I thought it was going to be, but it was better than I thought it was going to be, and it was slick, and it was engaging, and it was tense and exciting, and I did get involved, and Ricardo Darin's always brilliant, and the supporting cast was strong, and I love a movie where you've just got these sort of smug, this sort of lineup of just incredibly smug, entitled villains, and just seeing them sort of get theirs. It almost reminded me. Have you seen a film, Kate? I don't. You may not. Called Salo.
No.
Which is a Pasolini film from, I think, I want to say the 60s or 70s in Italy, but it's an allegory all about the fascists in Italy. I will say no more than that. Suffice to say, it's disgusting but brilliant. And there was something about when the camera just passes by that sort of lineup of just the worst of the worst, these awful people in power who are just so entitled and so grotesque, but just sitting there incredibly calm and unfazed by the situation that they find themselves in. there was something about that just reminded me of that movie. So that's another one to check out. Suffice to say, yes, it is somewhat kind of, let's say it in a nice way, sort of unremarkable in its execution. You know, it's slick, it's polished, it's dare I say even sort of Hollywood-esque in the way that it's turned out, but that is not to detract at all from obviously the content or the production itself. Thoroughly entertaining, and I learned something too. So what more can you ask for? I'm going to give it 4 lollipops out of 5.
Boom. Fantastic. Yeah, I got a history lesson right along with getting all the cathartic feeling of justice being meted out on really bad people, of good people pressing through when it was difficult, people giving testimonies when it's difficult and it's embarrassing. They're talking about horrible things that were done to them that are humiliating and in front of a room full of people, and it's being broadcast over the nation. They're talking about some of the most intimate atrocities that had been inflicted on them, and seeing that it's extremely powerful and extremely emotive. And so I had originally, and this happens so often as we talk about this, it adjusts my score. I was going into this, I'm not trying to copy your 4. I was going into this with 3.5, and I'm thinking, no, this deserves a solid 4. This is a really good movie that I enjoyed and exceeded my expectations. So I'm going to echo your 4 and say, yes, this is, and I also agree with you. If All Quiet doesn't win, I think this has got the chance to upset it.
Absolutely. But I mean, just to go back to what you were just saying, this is why we have these conversations, I think. Because it's, I certainly, I can speak to it. Watching so many movies back to back over, the daily grind of it can sometimes take the shine off some of these movies. And so it's only when you have the opportunity to sit down and really talk to people, do you get and to finally sort of articulate how you've actually reacted and responded to it. Do you solidify your standing and your opinion? And as we have seen in the past, sometimes it goes up, but sometimes it does come down. And I know for me, this is why I enjoy doing this.
Fantastic. I agree. Let's ask our viewers, has our discussion impacted your initial viewing of Argentina in 1985? We'd love to hear that, as well as any other comment. Just go ahead and leave that comment in the box below. And as a reminder, James and I are on social media. Who else would you want to follow more on Instagram and Twitter than James and Steve? You'll find those links in the description box below. James?
That's it. And, Argentinian cinema. I mean, help us out. Ricardo Darin is pretty much the only name I have off the top of my head at my disposal. And so he's great. Obviously, Wild Tales, Secret in Their Eyes, Penumbra. Is it Penumbra? I can't even remember if that's the name of the one where he's an ambulance chasing lawyer from about 2009. That one. But that's just pretty much where I am. So where else should we be looking? And other great Ricardo Darin movies, let us know. Right there.
I'm embarrassed to say I haven't been to Argentina. It looks like a beautiful country and I want to go.
Nor have I. Patagonia, a lot of Welsh people down there. So,
yeah, it'd be fantastic.
No, never been.
That's going to wrap it up for us here at Deep Dives. Until next episode, bye-bye.
Goodbye.
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be.